Part 84. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 835. To put it bluntly, the powerful shockwave Wang Ling released this time was just an experiment. Wang Ling was very confident about the strength of his mental power. It would not be troublesome to eliminate this group of infantry. However, he was a little unsure about the intensity limit of the shockwave. He happened to use this release to test it. With full firepower, he unleashed his mental power. The power was squeezed out to release the shockwave, which caused this serious damage. Of course, this kind of destruction did a lot of damage to Wang Ling. While squeezing his mental strength, it also caused severe pain in his head, and he lost his combat effectiveness in a short period of time. If it was used like this on the battlefield, the enemy would be stunned. The army is likely to take advantage of the time when he loses combat effectiveness to kill him. The results of the experiment also made Wang Ling make up his mind that he would no longer be able to use his mental power unreservedly in the future. The consequences would be serious. Ha ha ha. Just as Wang Ling was resting and recovering his mental strength, in the main hall of the Ruishan branch, Yuri's clone also saw the result and burst into laughter on the spot. Wang Ling, the special training I have given you these days is not in vain. Your mental power has been stretched to its limit. Do you already have such destructive power? Ha ha ha, not bad, not bad. Below, the generals looked at each other, with some horror in their eyes. The shock waves shown by Wang Ling in the video were so destructive that even they had no confidence that they could do it. Unknowingly, had Wang Ling become so strong mentally? Snored Yuri. Of course, not only the main hall, but also the entire life and death exercise is open to the public. All infantrymen in the Ruishan branch who have the right to view the electronic video can watch it. Now almost all the infantrymen have seen this last scene. Shock. There were quite a few people in this group of infantry who disliked Wang Ling, and they always felt that as a prisoner, he was not worthy of all the treatment he was receiving. However, during the exercise, Wang Ling's use of mental power alone caused shocking damage to them all. With his mental power so strong, how could they protest? They could only grit their teeth one by one, endure the dissatisfaction in their hearts, and reluctantly agree with Wang Ling. As the other 50 participants were eliminated one after another, this massive exercise finally came to an end. The Ruishan branch immediately dispatched a captured anti-aircraft crawler vehicle to the mountain forest where the exercise was conducted, specifically to take Wang Ling back. After arriving at the branch, Yuri's clone praised Wang Ling in the main hall in front of all the generals and representatives of some elite soldiers, and then promised to strengthen Wang Ling's transformation tomorrow. After success, he would be sent to the headquarters to meet with him. To become the real high-level leader of the spiritual empire, one person below 10,000 people. However, Wang Ling was somewhat indifferent to this kind of treatment. After reluctantly listening to these promises, he hurried back to the room and lay down on the bed. It is not easy to recover from a mental deficit without a long period of stable rest. The whole Ruishan branch has already spread rumors about Wang Ling's future treatment. All the infantrymen who heard about it are envious and jealous. However, as the protagonist, Wang Ling has no idea about all this. Now he is safely in the room. I fell asleep, and this sleep lasted almost a whole day. After he woke up, moved around a bit and ate some food, it was time for the final strengthening and transformation. He followed the order and came to the combat laboratory. At this time, Yuri's clone was sitting on the bone chair nearby, holding a goblet in one hand and tasting wine with great interest. Next to him, Yuri X also stood upright on the hoverboard, his face expressionless. Not far away, several generals looked at him expectantly, and dozens of elite soldiers stood in rows around him. In the center of them, there is a test bed, and 3 scientific researchers are doing the final mixing and debugging. The tempered experimental bed next to it was obviously prepared for Wang Ling. When Wang Ling arrived, everyone saw him. A group of infantrymen quickly saluted Wang Ling, and even the generals nodded slightly to Wang Ling. Yuri. Wang Ling did not pay attention to him immediately. Instead, he turned to look at the reagents on the test table and asked, "What is the success rate?" "Up to 95%, the person who answered him was a scientific researcher. After hearing this, Wang Ling nodded, "That's fine, there's nothing to prepare, just come." After saying that, he lay down on the steel experimental bed very casually. The system's mid-level enhancer has a success rate of 80%, which Wang Ling can accept. Now that the success rate is 95%, it is naturally not a problem. After he lay down, a scientific researcher put fixed handcuffs and leg cuffs on Wang Ling and explained, "The transformation process is quite painful. To prevent you from going crazy and hurting others due to pain, just aggrieve yourself first." Tch, Wang Ling was reluctant, but did not resist. Afterwards, several scientific researchers debugged it for a while, and the transformation agent finally took shape and was compressed and poured into a syringe. "Chief, the potion is ready." "Okay. Let's begin." "Yes." After a final report, the experiment finally began. One of the scientific researchers came to Wang Ling's side with a syringe. It took some effort to inject all the medicine into Wang Ling's veins, and then they hid outside the group of soldiers. "Humph, the show is about to begin." Seeing this scene, Yuri X smiled, and the ferocity in his heart reached a perverted level. When the medicine entered the body, Wang Ling didn't feel anything at first, but after less than 10 seconds, Wang Ling felt as if his body had exploded. It was turbulent and painful, as if all the cells in his brain were enduring torture. They were all in severe pain from the buzzing sound. Ah! Wang Ling had already endured the pain of intermediate enhancement, but this transformation seemed to be even more painful than the intermediate enhancement. Even with Wang Ling's endurance, he couldn't help but scream hysterically, and at the same time, he screamed violently. Under the resistance, the steel experimental bed was shaking violently. What's going on? Why is he resisting so fiercely? Yuri's clone seemed to feel something was wrong. However, those scientific researchers had absolute confidence in this potion and immediately said with relief, "Chief, the potion will change the human body's genes. This process will inevitably cause severe pain, which is normal. With Wang Ling's physical strength, it's okay to resist this pain." "Yeah." The Yuri clone was relieved. "Ah." As for Wang Ling, the screams continued, and due to genetic changes, the skin color of his body gradually changed to blue-black. At this point, everything in the experiment was normal, and the Yuri clone couldn't help but smile. However, immediately afterwards, the smile gradually solidified, because in the process of transformation, Wang Ling became more and more violent as the screams spread, and the screams were like the roar of a wild beast. That's not the most serious thing. As the roar became louder and louder, the mental connection through which the Yuri clone controlled Wang Ling began to turbulence. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 836. As the king of the spiritual empire, the spiritual power of Yuri's clone is almost unprecedented. With the help of several generals, he took over Wang Ling's control from the psychic beacon, and in an instant strengthened this control to the limit, making it almost unbreakable. Even if Wang Ling moved to a long distance to fight, or even entered an anti-aircraft crawler vehicle, he would not be able to control it. There is no way to break this control. The Yuri clone also has absolute confidence in his own mental power. No matter what he does, including personally training Wang Ling's mental power, he never worries that his control will loosen. However, he never dreamed that during the process of intensive transformation, Wang Ling gradually went berserk and his mental resistance increased rapidly. In addition, the special training a few days ago itself enhanced his mental strength. The combination of these two getting up actually threatened his control. This is not possible. I have spent so much effort controlling and training you, and you are about to undergo a complete transformation. How can I get you out of control? Upon noticing the trembling mental power connection, Yuri's clone was really startled, gritted his teeth, and then concentrated nearly all of his mental power to consolidate the mental power connection and ensure its absolute control. Ah! Roar! Wang Ling's riot continued, his screams became more and more terrifying, and his body was also undergoing ferocious changes. The steel experimental bed that fixed him, the foundation connected with the entire combat laboratory, was extremely solid. However, under Wang Ling's fierce struggle, not only the experimental bed, but also the entire combat laboratory was shaking slightly. The resistance was so fierce that everyone was shocked to see it. The scientific researchers who had previously sworn that this was a normal phenomenon also began to mutter at this time, "It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. Intensive transformation will indeed be painful, but it shouldn't be so severe. What's going on? Isn't it?" Because of the addition of the rage inhibitor, the risk of strengthening the transformation was greatly reduced, and the pain was also reduced. But who let Yuri X secretly replace this key rage inhibitor? Without the constraints of inhibitors, all uncertainties in the experiment have been raised to the top. Snort. This was really embarrassing for the Yuri clone. Every roar of Wang Ling was strengthening his mental resistance. He tried his best to strengthen his control. Every time he barely managed to stabilize, he started to tremble again. Next, almost crazy. Roar. However, it was useless no matter how crazy he was. Wang Ling's transformation had just begun, and he was far from reaching the end, and his mental resistance had not been raised to its peak. Finally, after another roar, this was already, the trembling mental connection was suddenly interrupted. This. The connection between Yuri's clone and Wang Ling's mental power was usually hidden and could not be seen unless he checked specifically. However, in this moment of interruption, it suddenly appeared, and everyone in the entire combat laboratory, all the people saw it, and their hearts were suddenly tightened. Everyone present has a deep understanding of how terrifying Wang Ling is. When he was controlled before, when he was in the Soul Empire, a group of people were extremely afraid of him. Once he lost control and became an enemy, it would be a big deal. Although Yuri. Quick, let's do it together and control him again. Of course, the Yuri clone would not give up so easily. It was the first to recover from the tense moment. After giving the order, a group of generals immediately took action, reciting ancient spells and adding spiritual power to the Yuri clone. On the body, Yuri. Buzz. The Yuri clone's own spiritual power was extremely powerful. Coupled with the blessings of these generals, the control power was even more powerful. Maintaining it at its peak, it cast an extremely strong spiritual power connection towards Wang Ling. Roar. Wang Ling's current state is indeed a bit weird. Logically speaking, his mental connection was severed, and he should have returned to the coalition camp in an instant. However, he has been suffering from the effects of the medicine, and this change could not be realized immediately. In the electronic map of the combat laboratory, Wang Ling's color was actually in a reddish-purple state. It was obvious that the transformation had not been completely completed. Buzz. At this moment, the spiritual connection arrived, trying to reverse this change. However, since Wang Ling was able to break the solid mental connection, how could he be controlled again? That powerful spiritual resistance actually formed a translucent circular barrier, blocking the spiritual connection and making it difficult to advance even an inch. While he was blocking it, Wang Ling's color in the electronic map finally turned completely red, and his mind became clear in an instant. He realized his situation almost in the blink of an eye, and then... roll. A hysterical roar came out, and the originally stagnant mental connection was knocked back in an instant. The backlash at this moment also caused a buzz in the minds of Yuri's clone and all the generals. Failed. Control failed, Wang Ling became an enemy. Kill him while he's immobilized now. A group of Yuri recruits were also frightened, and they didn't know how to deal with this scene. Just as they were muttering, Wang Ling also knew that he was in danger and hurriedly shouted in his head, "Uncle He, let me go back." As soon as he finished speaking, time in the entire red alert world stopped instantly, and Wang Ling returned to the transfer station of the different dimensional system. Boom. As soon as he returned, he knelt down on one knee, folded his arms in pain, and cursed with a ferocious face, "Damn Yuri, how dare you use me for experiments? Haha, Wang Ling, welcome back." At this time, Uncle He, whom he had not seen for several months, reappeared in front of Wang Ling, looking at Wang Ling with a faint smile. Roar. But how could Wang Ling have the time to strike up a conversation with him now? He let out a painful roar, and then asked hurriedly, "Uncle He, what's going on?" Uncle He replied calmly, "The effect of the potion was brought to the transfer station." In other words, even if you have returned to the transfer station, you are still undergoing intensive transformation experiments, and your body in reality will also change accordingly. Roar. He couldn't help but growl again in his throat, and Wang Ling asked painfully, "It shouldn't be, isn't it said that the success rate is 95%? Why is this happening?" Uncle He knew everything in the red alert world and had no intention of hiding it at this moment, because Yuri. Asshole. While roaring, Wang Ling couldn't help but curse. However, now is not the time to worry about this. Wang Ling hurriedly asked, "What will happen if we fail?" Uncle He replied, "If you fail, you will lose all consciousness and become an unconscious monster, and you will never be able to wake up in reality." Roar. Wang Ling was severely frightened by the consequences, but before he could ask the next words, the effect of the potion was one step closer. In pain, Wang Ling couldn't help but roar again, and his whole body he rolled on the ground, suffering extremely. "Uncle He, what should I do?" "Now, the only thing that can save you is the system's advanced physical fitness enhancer." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 837. Originally, Wang Ling asked Uncle He what to do, but he just wanted to seek medical treatment in a hurry. After all, there was really no one who could help him now. However, I didn't expect Uncle He to actually have a solution. Precisely because he knew this method, he watched Wang Ling in danger without feeling anxious at all. However, when Wang Ling heard about this advanced physical fitness enhancer, his body in pain suddenly trembled. "Girl, isn't this fighting fire with fire? The risk of advanced enhancement seems to be quite high, only about 20%. At the beginning, Wang Ling gave up exchange and injection because of this impressive success rate, but he never expected that at this moment he would have to face such a choice, either lose himself and become a monster, or gamble on the 20% success rate. Roar. While he was struggling, the transformation potion took further effect. Wang Ling's body gradually swelled, and the color became darker. The intense pain almost caused Wang Ling to collapse. Uncle He looked at all this indifferently, and continued to advise unhurriedly, "Wang Ling, it seems that if you don't inject high-level strengthening agents, your strengthening and transformation experiment will almost certainly fail, and you will become an unconscious monster. And if you inject high-level strengthening agents, there is at least a 20% or even higher success rate. Once successful, the pain of strengthening and transformation will be suppressed, and the success rate is greatly improved. But if the advanced strengthening fails, you will explode and die immediately, and your body in reality will immediately fall into brain death." I leave the right to you to choose what to do. Do I still have a choice? Roar. Uncle He, redeem the high-level enhancer and inject it into me. Wang Ling was still in pain, and after listening to Uncle He's advice, he made the decision almost without hesitation. The choice was made. There was no way, Wang Ling had no choice but to make this choice. If you refuse advanced enhancement and fail to transform and become an unconscious monster, what is the difference between that and death? Although advanced enhancement is also risky, at least there is a possibility of survival. Hearing Wang Ling's choice, Uncle He finally had a smile on his face. As soon as he changed hands, he deducted 50,000 points from Wang Ling, exchanged it for a special red reagent, and held it in his hand. He came lightly and squatted in front of Wang Ling. While injecting the high-level enhancer into Wang Ling's body, he said, "The advanced enhancer is actually far less painful than the intermediate enhancement. Even the primary enhancement is not as painful as the intermediate enhancement, not comparable. However, this process is extremely dangerous and difficult, and will create multiple obstacles deep in your consciousness. If you are not careful, you will be doomed. Wang Ling, you must get through it." After the injection, Uncle He floated back to his original position, the indifference on his face finally disappeared, and there was some worry on his brows. "Now I have done everything I can do, and the rest is up to you." Ho ho. No wonder Uncle He can swear that only high-level enhancers can save Wang Ling now. The highest level enhancers in the system are indeed the nemesis of the Soul Empire's transformation potion. After the potion enters the body, it doesn't take long for the violent potion to be effective. After being suppressed, Wang Ling gradually calmed down from his original violent state. However, high-level enhancers themselves also carry huge risks. After calming down, Wang Ling groaned several times and then closed his eyes. On the surface, there seems to be no change, but in fact, this is the most dangerous time for Wang Ling. Even Uncle He couldn't help but clenched his fists. "Hold it, Wang Ling. Where is this?" At the same time, Wang Ling's consciousness had entered a deeper illusory space. This space was pure white and seemed to be empty. Wang Ling felt a little confused when he stayed here. Swish swish swish. Just when Wang Ling was confused, the space suddenly changed violently, as if a dark black lone peak was formed. Taking a step back, there was a bottomless abyss. But the front is also very dangerous. It is actually a staircase composed of horizontal blades, connecting to the mountains in the distance. At the same time, the clothes on Wang Ling's body had basically disappeared, leaving only a thin layer of underwear and not even any shoes left. What does this mean? Do you want me to go to the Mountain of Swords? Wang Ling blinked and guessed the meaning of this space. Uncle He also said that on the way to advanced strengthening, there will be many obstacles deep in the consciousness. This Mountain of Swords seems to be the first barrier in this space. However, looking at the Mountain of Swords, Wang Ling smiled mockingly. "It doesn't seem to be difficult. With my physical strength, ordinary blades can't hurt me." As he spoke, Wang Ling stepped on it. Snored. But with this step, Wang Ling realized how terrifying this Mountain of Swords was. He didn't know whether it was because his consciousness was not strong enough, or the blade was too terrifying. He stepped on it without waiting for Wang Ling to put his weight on it. The blade had already cut the sole of his foot. Is it so sharp? It's just one level, is it so much? Knowing how powerful it was, Wang Ling was already feeling a little nervous. Swish. However, since this obstacle has already begun, there is no room for regret, either complete it or die. Just when Wang Ling hesitated, the retreat from the rear had disappeared, and it seemed that it was still moving towards Wang Ling little by little. If he was slow, he would fall into the endless abyss, and there would be no way to survive. Depend on. There was no other way, so Wang Ling could only put his weight on the blade and step on it with the other foot. Puff. At this moment, the sharp blade cut through the solace of Wang Ling's feet and almost got stuck in Wang Ling's bones. The heartbreaking pain made Wang Ling's eyes turn red. However, this predicament did not give him time to shout. Soon the blade under his feet became buoyant and seemed to be about to disappear. I have no choice but to fight tooth and nail in order to survive. Wang Ling gritted his teeth, endured the excruciating pain, and moved quickly one after another. Finally, at the cost of almost cutting the solace of his feet, he passed through the mountain of knives. Hoo-hoo! After successfully passing the test, Wang Ling sat down quickly. The severe pain from the bloody solace of his feet made him tremble all over, and he gasped in fear, "Didn't you say there is still a 20% success rate? Such a whole fa, I'm afraid it's not even 10%. This is only the first level, and I am already so frightened, and my legs are almost useless. How can I get through the remaining levels?" However, this space seemed to hear his complaints. During the short period of his rest, the originally cut solace of his feet healed quickly without leaving any wounds. Even the heart-wrenching pain remained. In memory. After every emotional test, the injuries will recover. Ha, this is quite interesting. Swish swish swish. Phew. Bear. He just woke up, but the space changed drastically. The misty mountain road ahead suddenly turned sharply, and there were layers of steep steps. And on the steps, a raging fire burned again, burning the steps until they were red. The second level is here. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 838. Is this the second level? Looking at the flaming mountain road in front of him, Wang Ling took a deep breath and gradually stood up. However, recalling the first pass and looking at the second pass, Wang Ling couldn't help but cursed, "I went up the mountain of knives and then into the sea of fire. What did I do in my previous life that was outrageous to both humans and gods? As for tossing me like this? Is the next level going to be a hot pot again?" Raging. No one could answer his question. All that could be heard now was the sound of the burning fire. And Wang Ling had no choice but to fire the arrow with the arrow on the string. The mountains of swords behind him had all disappeared, and even the rocks under his feet were gradually becoming illusory. If he had been slower, he would have failed. Fight. No matter whether you are a mountain of swords or a sea of fire, you can't even think of scaring me. Ah! As if to cheer himself up, Wang Ling shouted, then jumped down and landed on the first steep step. Tisk tisk. Raging. And this contact caused Wang Ling to suffer enough. The steps under his feet were burned to a flaming red, almost as if the solace of his feet would be burned to death in an instant, and the surrounding flames instantly wrapped him into a burning man. Every inch of skin on his body is being burned by the flames, as if it could melt at any time. Snort. This intense burning almost drove Wang Ling crazy, but fortunately his eyeballs were not affected and his vision remained normal. This time, he did not wait until the stone slabs under his feet became illusory, and jumped directly to the next floor, and then the third and fourth floors again. It was as if he was gradually jumping to hell, one jump after another, and each jump was tortured, as if he might fall down at any time, and then be completely burned to ashes by the flames. However, Wang Ling also knew the consequences of stopping or falling. With a strong desire to survive, Wang Ling could only grit his steel teeth, muster up 120% energy, and jump down with all his strength. He didn't even dare to stumble, for fear that he would really fall down by accident. In the end, with this unimaginable resilience, Wang Ling successfully passed through the road of fire. When he landed on the normal rock floor, he fell down with a bang as if all his strength had been drained out. This process was really torturous for Wang Ling. His entire body was burned by the flames until almost no trace of normal skin was left, almost melting away. It was terrifying and disgusting. In this state, Wang Ling was almost dying and couldn't even take a deep breath. Fortunately, This space is special enough, and each layer will repair the challenger's injuries. Not long after Wang Ling suffered, the skin all over his body returned to normal in the blink of an eye, and all the pain remained in his memories again. Recalling the pain that was enough to make people collapse, Wang Ling couldn't help but gasp, and soon cursed loudly, "Damn it, I survived again. If there are any other challenges, come on." Swish. As if hearing his provocation, the space changed again. The original mountain road appearance disappeared and was replaced by a hell-like scene. Dozens of torches gradually lit up in the dark environment. "Light up the way ahead. This road is very strange. It is a series of ordinary stone steps interspersed in a red river. The river is turbulent, and it seems that it may knock the people on the steps off at any time. Is this the third level? What the hell is this?" Seeing this, Wang Ling was also confused. Although the mountains of swords and seas of fire ahead were extremely dangerous, at least all the dangers were on the surface. However, Wang Ling didn't know what this third level meant or where the danger lay. Is there something wrong with the stone steps that prevent me from walking normally, or is there something wrong with the water? Thinking about this problem, Wang Ling came to the first stone step, squatted down and pressed the stone step. I originally thought that the stone steps were very unstable, but after I pressed them, I realized that the stone steps were fixed at all and could not be pressed no matter how hard I pressed them. Then Wang Ling stretched out his hand again and tentatively touched the red water, but his expression immediately changed at this touch. The red water seemed to contain thousands of years of ice, and almost froze Wang Ling's soul in an instant. Stiff. Fortunately, it was just a touch like a dragonfly touching water. Wang Ling calmed down after a burst of coldness, and then became frightened for a while. "Sister, you can't touch this water, it's just like the underworld water. If you accidentally fall in, you will freeze to death instantly." After testing, Wang Ling also made a certain judgment. However, the next question arises. If the stone is stable, then it should not be difficult to pass the level. Where is the danger point? Boom boom. Boom boom. Wang Ling couldn't let Wang Ling think any longer. The road behind him started to collapse, and it was about to collapse at Wang Ling's feet. "I don't care about that anymore." Wang Ling had no choice but to step on it and imagined various dangerous situations. However, these stone steps are indeed very stable. There is no danger at all for Wang Ling standing on them. Rumble. Without giving Wang Ling too much time to doubt, the collapse at the rear gradually followed, and finally touched the yellow spring water, causing the entire water surface to boil. Fight. Unable to stay any longer, Wang Ling simply gritted his teeth and continued on the second stone step, then the third and fourth. There was never any danger in this process. Although the Huangquan water was turbulent, it could not affect Wang Ling at all. While crossing, Wang Ling was also muttering, "What on earth is going on in this level? Hey Wang Ling." Just when Wang Ling was confused, a call came from the yellow spring. He stopped and turned his head to look, and it turned out to be a black shadow. This dark figure seemed to know Wang Ling very well. In this special environment, he actually tempted him. "After the advanced enhancement is successful, what do you want to do? Hee, don't tell me that you are just trying to survive. There is no saint. If you don't have any ambition, you will have it too. Before, you had no power or strength, so you could only tolerate it. But after the advanced enhancement is successful, what should you tolerate? The sky is high and the bird can fly. Your stage is far, far away. Don't limit yourself to your own 1/3 of an acre." In fact, Uncle He had tried to enlighten Wang Ling several times before, but was rejected one by one. But this time, Wang Ling was in a very special state, and the voice seemed to be hypnotizing him. Unknowingly, Wang Ling felt a little lost. At this moment, stone steps protruded from the yellow spring water beside Wang Ling. "Come on, I have a shortcut here. Directly through here, advanced enhancement will be successful. You will have powerful abilities that ordinary people can't imagine, and you don't have to suffer other sins. Come on. After the words fell, the black shadow became silent. Wang Ling, who seemed to have lost his soul, looked at the stone steps beside him and hesitated. Rumble. While he was hesitating, the stone steps behind him were gradually collapsing, and he was about to reach Wang Ling's location. At this time, Wang Ling seemed unable to resist the temptation, so he turned around and walked towards the stone steps beside him. Wrong. However, his center of gravity was almost gone, but he suddenly woke up, retracted his feet in time, and glared at the black shadow. Get out. It's not your turn to tell me what I want to do. I want to do it. To gain power, you have to pay a price, there is no shortcut. Buzz. This space seemed to sense Wang Ling's decision. As soon as he finished speaking, the black shadow gradually disappeared, and the stone steps beside him also disappeared. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 839. It turns out that whether it is the dark shadow or the shortcut on the stone steps that just appeared beside him, they are all temptations and traps. As long as Wang Ling is really bewitched or steps on that shortcut, he will fall into the underworld. Beyond redemption. Fortunately, Wang Ling noticed something was wrong at the critical moment and woke up in time, thus saving his life. Looking at the place where the shortcut on the stone steps just disappeared, Wang Ling couldn't help but feel a little scared. Good boy, it's so dangerous. It turns out that the danger in this level is not the physical torture, but the psychological temptation. Buzz. Without giving Wang Ling too much time to think, the stone steps under his feet had begun to become illusory and could disappear at any time. Wang Ling was worried for a while, and quickly stepped forward to the next stone step, and then continued walking. As the saying goes, terror comes from the unknown. Wang Ling was cautious before because he didn't know where the danger was in this level. But now that he has come to a conclusion, he no longer has any worries, and the subsequent journey will naturally be much faster. Of course, the trap in this level is not just a black shadow to tempt. Wang Ling walked through for a while and heard other tempting sounds again. Hey, Wang Ling, you are finally here. But Wang Ling didn't give him any face and scolded him directly. Whether I come or not is none of your business. Get out of here and leave me alone. The black shadow didn't seem to expect Wang Ling to be so straightforward and suddenly got stuck. However, Wang Ling took advantage of this time to continue walking and crossed here. In addition, on the subsequent journey, there are also tempting sounds of landing one after another, but... Wang Ling. Roll. Ha ha ha, Wang Ling, waiting for you. Wait a minute, get out. Wang Ling, I miss you. It disgusts me to death, get out. Wang Ling. You're the one who knows how to yell, right? Get out of here. Dot. All the tempting sounds, but not even a complete sentence, were all scolded back by Wang Ling. I don't know if those black shadows have specific thoughts. If they do, I'm afraid they will all be depressed to death now. This level is a test of psychological temptation. Through a method similar to hypnosis, it stirs up their inner desires and takes the opportunity to trap and kill the intruders. Indeed, everyone has desires and ambitions, and Wang Ling is no exception. However, in comparison, Wang Ling cherishes his life even more. Even the injection of high-level enhancer is only necessary to survive. Coming to this level with his mentality, he actually formed a natural self-protection mechanism. Wang Ling was able to easily overcome temptations that would be fatal to others. Just like this, all the way across, all the way cursed, the third hurdle, in the end Wang Ling passed it very casually. Hold on, Wang Ling. While Wang Ling was forcibly breaking through various obstacles and levels in a deeper consciousness, in the transfer station of the different dimensional system, Uncle He was still paying attention to Wang Ling. His hands behind his back were clenched into fists and never let go. He looked at Wang Ling without blinking, obviously very worried. The success rate of this advanced enhancement is indeed too low. Different from the previous primary enhancement and intermediate enhancement, this advanced enhancement is indeed more dangerous, but the dangerous method is very unique. For example, Wang Ling breaks through many obstacles in the deep consciousness. The terrible plight of human life. During the process of resistance, Wang Ling's body in the transfer station and in reality did not change at all, and he would not be injured at the same time. However, during this process, his body is constantly resisting and adapting to the high-level enhancer. Once Wang Ling breaks through all obstacles in his deep consciousness, his body will also be completely adapted to the high-level enhancer, and further enhancements will be 100% successful. But once it fails, and fails to run in the enhancer, it loses consciousness and has no resistance. The powerful power of the advanced enhancement will be completely out of control, blowing up its body in a few seconds. Therefore, the success or failure of this advanced enhancement depends entirely on whether Wang Ling in his deep consciousness can successfully break through all obstacles. In this process, Uncle He can't help him in the slightest. He can only watch helplessly, feeling in his heart he cheered silently. And in this deep level of consciousness, the flow rate of time is almost the same as that in the transfer station. On the way to break through the level, Wang Ling's body in the transfer station always maintained a sleeping state, for a long, long time. I can't remember how much time passed. It was so long that Uncle He was wondering what happened to Wang Ling on the way through the border. Wang Ling in the transfer station suddenly opened his eyes. Huh? Was it successful? Uncle He was overjoyed, but before he could make any further moves, Wang Ling suddenly let out a muffled groan, which shocked Uncle He. Gila gila. Gila gila. Then, Wang Ling's body began to squirm quickly like softened rubber. Occasionally, one or two leaking bumps would appear, but they would quickly retract into the body. From time to time, clicking and breaking sounds could be heard. Sounds pretty scary. When Uncle He saw this scene, he was overjoyed, because all the obstacles in Wang Ling's deep consciousness were broken, and now it was the advanced enhancer that greatly enhanced the performance of his genes. The most dangerous stage of advanced strengthening has passed. Although the pain and danger in that process are even higher than those of primary strengthening and intermediate strengthening, the current strengthening process is relatively gentle. Wang Ling just feels there was a slight pain, and he frowned, and he didn't even make a sound. Gila gila. Gila gila. Gene enhancement is still going on. Originally, Wang Ling's body gradually expanded due to the strengthening and transformation potion of the Soul Empire, and even some of the wild beastman's green and black skin became. However, under this squirming, everything gradually returned to normal. Seems to have completely suppressed the strengthening and transformation potion. He continued to squirm for a moment, and the genetic enhancement ended. However, before Wang Ling could sit up, a strong potion suddenly took effect in his body. The violent impact for a moment made Wang Ling unable to bear it. It kept roaring and rolling on the ground. Advanced enhancement has actually ended now, and what is tormenting Wang Ling now is actually the strengthening and transformation potion of the Soul Empire. Pain is inevitable, but Wang Ling, who has completed advanced enhancement, can fully bear this level of pain. As a result, under such transformation, Wang Ling's body has undergone several changes in skin color and size, and finally returned to its normal state. The enhanced transformation potion finally completed its mission here, successfully transforming Wang Ling into the unique combat unit of the Soul Empire, the Wild Beast King. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 840. Roar. Buzz. The moment the transformation was completed, all the discomfort in the body disappeared. Wang Ling felt an unprecedented sense of comfort in his heart, and there was a powerful spiritual power in his mind that was ready to be poured out. While Wang Ling was in the transfer station, he didn't have to worry about all the consequences. He let out a long roar without restraint, and at the same time, a powerful spiritual power surged out. The level of mental coercion suddenly rose to the level of a substantial shock wave, sweeping away. Come, the entire system transfer station is immediately hit by a strong storm. All the furnished items are shaken or fall down, and even the small nest prepared for Xiaohei collapses and shatters in an instant. As an artificial intelligence brain of a different dimensional system, Uncle He had no physical body at all and was immune to all attacks in the transfer station. However, when he came into contact with Wang Ling's shockwave, he was in a trance for an instant. By the time he regained consciousness, the transfer station had been completely destroyed by the shockwave. "Can't you just control it?" Uncle He was a bit dumbfounded by this, but he wasn't too offended. He snapped his fingers and the messy transfer station was restored to its original state within a few seconds. At this time, Wang Ling also finished venting. He looked at his hands and giggled, "Hey, Uncle He, this is not the real world. It's a rare place where I can vent. Why am I still restrained?" Uncle He shook his head, smiled and said nothing. He looked at Wang Ling who was giggling for a while, and then asked, "How do you feel now?" Speaking of this, Wang Ling looked excited and clenched his fists. The muscles on his arms swelled up almost instantly, turning into blue-black muscle lumps. Boom. Then, Wang Ling suddenly stepped on the ground, and the muscles on his legs swelled up, transforming into thick blue-black thighs like a wild orc. Tisk tisk. High-level enhancement can originally turn you into a humanoid monster, but it's a good thing that you accepted the medicine of the Mind Empire and even partially transformed your body into a monster. Seeing this, Uncle He couldn't help but joke. Wang Ling smiled confidently, "Not only that, watch out, Uncle He." Roar. After saying that, Wang Ling let out a long roar, and then his whole body grew exaggeratedly. In the end, it grew to a height of 3 meters. The surface of the body was blue and black, and the muscles all over the body were explosively bulging. The whole body was one size larger. Wild orcs. Maintaining this form, Wang Ling clapped his hands and explained, "The Yuri clone said that this wild beast king is similar to my troop change, but it is not exactly the same. I can change other troop classes in an instant, but that this change is mainly a change in weapons and attack methods. But the wild beast king has truly changed my genes, allowing me to freely control my body and change forms at will." As he spoke, Wang Ling's body gradually shrank and reached normal height, but it did not change back to its original appearance. He still looked like a wild beast king, with exaggerated bulges of muscles all over his body and a full sense of strength. Maintaining this form, Wang Ling said with a smile, "There is also this kind of change, including partial transformation into a wild beast. Maybe the Soul Empire did not expect me to do this. The Soul Empire's strengthening transformation potion only allows me to transform into a giant wild beast. But the advanced enhancer has also changed my genes, strengthened my control over my body, and the changes of the wild orcs have also become more dexterous." And, this kind of operation, Uncle He was confused. The horror of the alternate dimensional system is that, except for the 3 major levels of enhancers, it does not have a fixed direction of enhancement. It all depends on what game the host initially chooses. Although Uncle He, as an artificial intelligence brain of a different dimensional system, has single-handedly built an extremely realistic world such as the Red Alert world, he does not have too much power to interfere in the development of that world. In what direction will Wang Ling be strengthened there? He, the butler, was also unpredictable and didn't even know as much as Wang Ling. For example, now, Facing Wang Ling's form, Uncle He was confused. Dexterity is good, but if you specifically shrink the body of the wild beast king, what's the point? Wang Ling smiled and said, it means a lot. First of all, in terms of clothing, I am in a transit station. My clothes can be stretched and retracted at will, but the real world is different from the red alert world. Suddenly it rises to 3 meters, and even my underpants must be stretched. Damn, running around naked. Uncle He was stunned. This was the first time he heard this statement. Then Wang Ling continued, then there is the issue of the target. On the battlefield, the bigger the body, the more obvious the target, which is very disadvantageous. Anyway, when you transform into a wild beast, your strength remains unchanged no matter what form you take, so there is no need to hurt yourself. So big of a target. After hearing this, Uncle He finally understood and nodded slightly, it makes sense. So, other than that, are there any changes? Wang Ling replied, in the intermediate level of enhancement, it is purely an external drug that strengthens the body through abnormal pain. The brain cannot adapt for a while, so it cannot control its own power. But high-level enhancement directly changes the corresponding genes. In addition to being able to dexterously control the state of the beast, I can also control my own strength very delicately. Uncle He, give me an egg and a piece of steel. Uncle He snapped his fingers, and the two items immediately fell to Wang Ling and were caught by Wang Ling. He sandwiched the egg between the index and middle fingers of his left hand, and held the steel bar tightly from the center with his right hand. His palm turned into a green-black beast, and he squeezed it tightly. Within a moment, he made deep fingerprints on the steel bar. But looking at the egg on the left hand, it was very stable. The strength of the two fingers happened to hold the egg without breaking it. After making this demonstration, Wang Lingke threw away the two test items, clapped his hands, and explained, advanced strengthening has brought my physical strength to a new peak, but without the embarrassment of intermediate strengthening. In addition to strength control, I can also control the attacks of various types of troops, such as the magnetic blast infantry. Tisk tisk. As soon as he finished speaking, Wang Ling did not see him change arms, but a strong electric spark suddenly flashed in the palm of his right hand. It entered his body along his arms, then entered the ground along his legs, spread out, and burst out. The ground closed together in the air to form the shape of a cage, enveloping Wang Ling, and then moved its target, imprisoning Uncle He through the air. Tisk tisk. This control technique works. Uncle He was also amazed. However, this was not over yet. The electric light cage disintegrated and transformed into various forms one after another, wandering around the transfer station, almost turning the transfer station into a world of lightning. Finally, all the lightning transformed into the form of a thunder dragon and slammed into Wang Ling. In an instant, Wang Ling's body was blasted with many scars, and the bones were visible. In the past, this kind of injury would have healed on its own, but very slowly. But now, this horrific injury healed at a speed visible to the naked eye, and it only took a few breaths to recover as before. Patting the newly healed wound on his body, Wang Ling smiled, obviously very satisfied. Yes, the speed of wound healing has exceeded that of ordinary elite soldiers, and the chance of survival on the battlefield has also been greatly improved. Ha ha ha. Seeing the huge changes in Wang Ling before and after, Uncle He was also very excited. Before, you never dared to inject high-level enhancers, but after you came back from the Mind Empire, you had to forcibly inject them. Instead, it was a blessing in disguise, and the system helped you. A blessing in disguise. Wang Ling originally had a proud expression, but when he said this word, his face suddenly darkened. Uncle He, before I was in the Soul Empire, I had no intention of returning. If I continue like this, or the enhanced transformation experiment is really if it is completed successfully, I will never be able to come back. Don't you have any intention of reminding me or waking me up? Different dimension red alert world. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 841. This incident really made Wang Ling angry. Wang Ling is still a player in the red alert world. It doesn't matter if he gets injured, but he must not die in it. However, being controlled by the Mind Empire and having no intention of returning at all is like being forcibly locked up. Once the Mind Empire successfully strengthens and transforms according to their ideas, Wang Ling will be completely hopeless. That state is just like it makes no difference if you die, the consequences are very serious. In this process, Uncle He, as the artificial intelligence brain of the system, could have reminded him midway, or interrupted him, to give him a hand, but Uncle He did not do so, and waited until Wang Ling got out of control due to an accident. He just showed up at the transfer station. How could Wang Ling not be angry? However, Uncle He's answer was also very bachelor: I built the world of Red Alert. This is true, but to put it bluntly, it is just an artificial intelligence. You are the real player. I can only watch you in Red Alert every move in the police world, but they have no right to interfere with anything you do there. Don't you have rights again? Such a familiar rhetoric. Wang Ling was still angry, his eyes were very sharp. A dignified and systematic artificial intelligence brain is restricted by so many rules. Uncle He, don't you feel aggrieved? Is this system really so cruel that it doesn't care about my life or death at all? He. Faced with Wang Ling's questioning, Uncle He didn't take offense. Instead, he smiled meaningfully. Wang Ling didn't understand what he meant, and there were some questions in his cold eyes. Why are you laughing? Uncle He replied, indeed, the system is very cruel, and the rules impose very strict restrictions on me. After all, nothing can be achieved without rules. However, there are always loopholes in the rules. As long as I find this loophole, I can still do something. Wang Ling, aren't you curious? Yuri values you so much, but why did you still make a mistake in the experiment and get rid of control? Huh? Is it your fault? Wang Ling's eyes widened in disbelief. Uncle He nodded with a smile, that's right. According to the rules of the Red Alert world, a force can only have one hero-level unit. The Mind Empire can have 2 Yuri, but he still wants to create another heroic unit, which is not okay. Although Yuri has a high position in the Red Alert world, he has no right to change this rule. No matter what he will do in the end, as long as he has this idea, you can intervene under the rules. Yuri methods to interfere. Wang Ling suddenly understood, emotional Yuri. Uncle He said proudly, that's right. However, after all, my authority is limited and I cannot interfere too much. I am only responsible for dropping this stone. I have no control over the ripples it will cause in the end. Fortunately, the result did not let me disappointed. You not only got rid of the control, but also successfully completed the double strengthening. Isn't this a blessing in disguise? What a blessing in disguise. At this point, Wang Ling's original anger finally weakened a little. He smiled bitterly and sat down. Thinking back to the time when he was controlled, Wang Ling felt a little scared. To be honest, I would rather not accept double reinforcement, and I don't want to be controlled by the Mind Empire. That's really not a joke. When the Yuri clone gave me special training, I thought the dark space in the deep fear should be the entire system, or the Red Alert world. Being controlled and losing the consciousness of returning is like being locked in a Red Alert world. I didn't know this when I was controlled, but in fact I was still feeling strong fear deep inside. Uncle He also nodded in agreement. Yes, the illusion of deep fear is just a reflection of the depths of your consciousness. As for that illusion, it should be easy to understand. Wang Ling picked up the conversation. Yeah, that's the most dangerous and passive situation I imagined in my head, because I was worried that the extra-dimensional system would be exposed, and I would be ostracized and wanted by the whole world. Haha, the picture in your mind is not without this possibility. Therefore, for safety reasons, the existence of the different dimensional system must not be exposed in the real world, Uncle He said. Wang Ling also nodded, agreeing with this point of view. When it came to the real world, Wang Ling suddenly thought of something and quickly asked, "By the way, Uncle He, I have been controlled in the red alert world for several months. How am I doing in the real world?" Wang Ling was worried when he returned and didn't know the situation, but he didn't dare to go back immediately. Uncle He waved his hand, and a picture suddenly appeared in the space in front of him. The picture was exactly Wang Ling's real-life situation, injecting an intravenous drip on the hospital bed, but it seemed that it was reflected in the real world because of the previous strengthening. The hospital bed was a mess caused by his body, and there were even several impatient and panicked nurses on the side, calling for the doctor again and again. Seeing this, Wang Ling was stunned. "Why am I hospitalized?" Uncle He smiled and said, "You have to thank Xiao He and your classmates in the dormitory opposite. It was Xiao He who noticed your danger and called them to send you in. Otherwise, you would have just returned with nothing to do, even if you were still there. Even if you are alive, your body will be overwhelmed. Without energy supply for a long time, your body will die sooner or later. Xiao He, I have been wronged by him these days." When it comes to Xiao He, Wang Ling can't help but feel a little guilty. Uncle He took the opportunity to ask, "What, are you going back?" Unexpectedly, Wang Ling shook his head. "No, now is not the time. This is already the case in the real world anyway. If you have too many bills, you don't have to worry about too many lice, and if you get injured, it doesn't matter." "Oh? Do you want to?" Revenge. Wang Ling's eyes gradually turned cold. "The Empire of the Soul and the Allies have tricked me into this, I can't let them go. The Allies are still too far away, but the Empire of the Soul, I must overthrow it." "Genius. Haha, you are ambitious." After Uncle He finished speaking, he snapped his fingers and the door to the world of Red Alert opened again. "Then I wish you success." Snort. Wang Ling was not polite, snorted coldly, stood up, and walked in directly. In the Red Alert world, in the Ruishan Branch Operations Laboratory, time has resumed flowing at any time after Wang Ling's return. A group of Yuri recruits surrounding him are looking at Wang Ling on the central test bed in horror, and they seem to be about to take action at any time in confusion. But while he was on alert, Wang Ling, who was on the test bed, suddenly released a powerful wave of electricity that subtly destroyed the test bed and restored his freedom. Fire! Realizing that Wang Ling was completely out of control, the leading Yuri recruit couldn't wait any longer and gave an order to directly launch a mental attack. Swish! Oh ho! However, before a few people could open fire, Wang Ling had already released a powerful mental shockwave, which exploded all the guards almost instantly. Even all the scientific researchers could not escape. The entire combat laboratory was just the Yuri clone, Yuri X, and several generals were left. They were originally in a trance, but they woke up with the shockwave attack. Wang Ling. Yuri's clone hurriedly stood up and looked at Wang Ling in front of him with a very horrified expression. But Wang Ling smiled calmly. "Haha, Yuri, we meet again." Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 842. Wang Ling. Wang Ling, what state are you in now? Wang Ling, which camp are you in now? Seeing Wang Ling's indifferent expression, the generals were furious and asked questions one after another. But Wang Ling smiled playfully and said mockingly, "You are still a general, why do you ask such an idiot question? What camp am I in? Is there no color marking on the electronic map? Red. Allied forces. You managed to escape after all." After several generals checked Wang Ling's color on the electronic map, their expressions became even more ugly. "Even Yuri, I regret doing such a stupid thing. The Yuri clone gritted his teeth and said with some resentment, "Did the experiment fail? It shouldn't be. If it failed, you shouldn't be alive. But if it succeeded, why are you from the coalition camp?" Tisk, tisk. After hearing this, Wang Ling shook his head, as if he really liked seeing their panic expressions. Immediately afterwards, in front of all of them, Wang Ling's body expanded rapidly, turning into a green-black beastman, and sneered, "Who said it failed? Isn't this a success? Hee, it's just that on the basis of your transformation potion, I also injected a higher grade strengthening agent, which made me more comfortable with the form changes of the wild beast king." Hateful. At this time, Yuri's clone's mentality had collapsed, and he glared at Wang Ling fiercely. "Wang Ling, you shouldn't have returned to the coalition. I have always been tolerant of you before, because I regarded you as mine. A capable subordinate. But now, since I can no longer control you, I have no choice but to destroy you." "Oh? Destroy me? Can you do it?" Wang Ling raised his brows, as if he had heard some joke. "Whether you can do it or not, give it a try." Swish. The Yuri clone did not dare to talk nonsense anymore. As soon as he finished speaking, he released all the shock waves of his mental power and swept towards Wang Ling in an arc shape. Puff. Being affected by this powerful shock wave, Wang Ling was indeed affected, but it did not explode directly as Yuri's clone expected. Instead, his whole body flew backwards and spit out a mouthful of blood. Moreover, that was all. On the way to flying upside down, Wang Ling adapted to the impact force and landed forcefully, sliding backwards for a distance and stopping on the ground. After standing up, Wang Ling wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. His abnormal physique quickly repaired the injuries in his body, while still sighing, as expected of the king of the spiritual empire. His spiritual power is indeed powerful. However, Yuri, you regret it the most. What happened is probably the special training for me. Now your mental power can no longer kill me. Humph. What are you still doing? Let's do it together. One person's power cannot kill Wang Ling, and the Yuri clone has lost its previous calmness. Late. However, without giving the other generals any preparation to join forces, Wang Ling had already charged in like a wild beast king. When he was in the intermediate level of enhancement, his running speed was already quite exaggerated. Now that he was in the advanced level of enhancement and in the form of the Beast King, his speed increased even more. Within a moment, he rushed to the Yuri clone, stretched out his big hand, a slap was slapped on the face of Yuri's clone. The huge force actually knocked it away and hit the wall. All the bones in the body were shattered in an instant, and even the spine and skull were shattered into pieces. Damn, you can't die anymore. Leader. Several generals were startled by the scene and quickly released shockwaves in an attempt to kill Wang Ling. However, Wang Ling had become accustomed to shockwave attacks. Several generals worked together, but they failed to injure Wang Ling. Instead, he was quickly approached, punching one by one, and detonating them all. He didn't even have a chance to escape. Buzz. 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 All of a sudden, a hornet's nest was stirred up. The leader's clone and several generals were all killed. The commanders of the 3 major bases in the Ruishan branch were all frightened and launched the highest intensity alarm. The 3 major bases' emergency warning signals flashed everywhere, startling everyone. Whether they were infantry or tanks and armored vehicles, near or far, they all received orders at this time and rushed to the combat laboratory quickly. In the combat laboratory, only Wang Ling and Yuri X are left. Facing the ferocious Wang Ling, Yuri. "Why?" Wang Ling smiled playfully. "Yuri, it will erase all your character, and you will be an unconscious monster by then. It was me, I allowed you to avoid this tragedy, so I am your benefactor, you cannot kill me." "Oh? What you said is quite interesting." Wang Ling smiled sinisterly, and stepped closer to Yuri. "It was me who killed me. I am a person with no other merits, clear grudges, and very vindictive. If I hadn't had some means of my own, I would have been killed by you. Therefore, you are not my benefactor. So please go die." Wang Ling. Yuri, that embarrassed look really amused Wang Ling. However, Wang Ling did not show any mercy. Yuri, however, he is not as strong as a ball. With this collision, he immediately followed the footsteps of Yuri's clone. It is ironic to say that the senior leaders of the Soul Empire originally tried to transform Wang Ling into the Wild Beast King, erasing all his personality for their own use. However, the experiment failed and a major incident occurred. Not only did Wang Ling get rid of the control, he finally used the Beast King they had transformed to kill them all with his own hands. Of course, this is not the end. For Wang Ling, the destruction has just begun. After killing everyone in the laboratory, Wang Ling transformed into a Navy SEAL and completely blew up the laboratory from inside, exposing his entire body to the Ruishan branch. But now in the Ruishan branch, due to the alarm, a large number of infantry tanks are desperately gathering here. A shocking battle is inevitable. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 843. Buzz. 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 Ta-da da ta-da da. Quick. The highest level of alert, no ink stains. Something serious has happened, hurry up. The laboratory exploded. Wang Ling, look, that's Wang Ling, the red one, from the coalition camp. Damn it, he got out of control. This is bad, we can't let him escape, kill him. At this time, the Ruishan branch was in chaos. Under the highest level of alarm, everyone panicked. However, under the military order, almost all the guards in the three bases were running desperately. Going to the center of the riot, the entire Ruishan branch is rioting. While running, the combat laboratory suddenly exploded, exposing Wang Ling, who had returned to the coalition camp. A group of Yuris saw the scene from the electronic map and immediately became red-eyed. Indeed, they were very afraid of Wang Ling, but they wanted to kill Wang Ling even more. Although Wang Ling is extremely powerful in combat, he is now in the Ruishan branch and is surrounded by the total force of the three major bases. How can he still be afraid of him? Well, this welcome ceremony really flatters me. Wang Ling was also surprised when he saw this posture. However, after being surprised, a strong fighting spirit emerged deep in his heart. The dual strengthening is completed, and before we have time to do actual combat, let's try it with you. First, mind control. Buzz. After all, Yuri's guards came from different positions to encircle and suppress them, and their distances from Wang Ling were also different. The group closest to them now were also quite far away from Wang Ling. However, after Wang Ling finished speaking, he forcibly cast a spiritual connection across such a long distance and controlled a gust tank. This distance is so far that it is even higher than the test distance after the special training. It is almost 4 to 5 times the limit control distance of ordinary psychic troops. Buzz. Buzz. However, this kind of terrifying control was not Wang Ling's limit. After the first mental connection, he cast 2 more distant connections one after another, and 2 more Gale tanks were controlled one after another. During the previous test, Wang Ling could not control 3 tanks in a row, but after double strengthening, not only the control distance was greatly expanded, but the number even exceeded the limit, reaching the point of 3 tanks. This scene, which fell on the electronic map, really frightened the commanders of the 3 major bases. At the same time, they urged the major troops even harder to kill Wang Ling at all costs. He must not be allowed to leave here alive. Boom boom boom. Boom boom boom. After the three Guangfeng tanks were controlled, it was natural that they could not be just decorations. Under Wang Ling's control, they immediately turned against each other and started bombarding the tanks beside them. The tank that was bombarded immediately stopped and began to fight back, while the other tanks and infantry were still charging hard. This control ability is pretty good. Next, let's try the shockwave. Swish. Oh ho. Boom. After the mind control test showed results, Wang Ling couldn't wait to release a large-scale mental shockwave, covering almost half of the base. Within this range, all the infantry exploded, and even the armored units were greatly affected. The tornado tank instantly lost 1/3 of its health, and the gate tank lost half or even most of its health. As for the magneto-electric tank, it was the most miserable. It exploded directly under the shockwave. In just this round of mental shockwaves, hundreds of infantrymen died tragically, and dozens of tanks were damaged to varying degrees. The damage was so severe that it was simply outrageous. In fact, this level of destruction is not the limit of Wang Ling's mental strength. He is just worried that if he unleashes it to his fullest, he may lose his combat effectiveness in a short time. Under this situation, he must not do that. A shockwave of this magnitude might have been enough to paralyze Wang Ling before. However, after double strengthening, his mental strength has made another leap. This kind of shockwave can even paralyze him in a short time. Released many times. Hey, can you also attack tanks? Isn't this almost the same as Yuri X's shockwave? Wang Ling was very satisfied with the results of the experiment. Whether it is mind control or shockwave attacks, these are the combat methods of the psychic army. However, even the psychic army cannot do this at all. Wang Ling is better than his master. If the Yuri clone had known that Wang Ling would use powerful spirits with the power to counterattack the Soul Empire, I am afraid that even if he is killed, he will not go to specially train Wang Ling. Of course, this is not all of Wang Ling's attack power. After testing his psychic power, Wang Ling transformed into an elite combat soldier and started shooting fiercely from a very long distance. Da-da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da-da. The growth of elite combat soldiers is the basis for Wang Ling's strength. Its extraordinary destructive power, faster rate of fire than a Gatling gun, and its excessive range and combined attack capabilities, is actually the most terrifying nightmare on the battlefield. The Allies are afraid, the coalition forces are afraid, and the Yuri troops of the Soul Empire are even more afraid. Under his shooting, all the armored units that survived the shockwave were blasted, and the infantrymen coming from behind also fell in pieces, making it difficult to advance even an inch for a period of time. Using human sea tactics to fight against Wang Ling, this kind of loss can make the hearts of the commanders of the three major bases bleed. The advanced enhancement of the system mainly strengthened Wang Ling's genes and physical qualities. It actually had no direct enhancement effect on the combat effectiveness of his unit. However, Wang Ling relied on his powerful mental control ability to forcibly increase the combat effectiveness of the arms. His shooting speed is too fast, and his attack power is too high. Each bullet carries a certain amount of electromagnetic energy. This kind of electromagnetic energy has many wonderful uses. It not only enhances the destructive power of its bullets, but also has paralysis and deceleration effects. However, the infantry could not withstand the attack of its bullets at all, and they were all killed instantly, without the paralysis effect being reflected. The armored troops also felt uncomfortable. When being shot by bullets, they themselves could not resist for long. However, after being hit, they also had an electromagnetic deceleration effect. Anyone caught by Wang Ling's bullets would be like being targeted by a poisonous snake. At a glance, it was impossible to avoid the fate of being preyed upon, and they burst into pieces one after another. Maintaining this kind of powerful fire suppression, Wang Ling alone stirred up the storm in the Ruishan branch. Yuri's guards gathered troops from the three major bases to attack, but for a while there was nothing Wang Ling could do. With strong Wang Ling came to take revenge out of anger, and the powerful combat power displayed by Wang Ling made the three commanders tremble with fear. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 844. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Oh. 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 Boom. 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 The fierce battle is still going on. Wang Ling is like a peerless killing god. The elite combat soldiers strengthened by the King of Soldiers completely unleash their fighting power. They really have a posture that one person can withstand thousands of troops. He stood in the center, continuously spraying dense fire snakes, but the Yuri guards who were surrounding him were unable to get close. There seemed to be a barrier outside his fire circle, and all Yuri guards were trapped. Whenever the guards inside hit this barrier, they will inevitably attract Wang Ling's thunderous offensive and quickly kill them. Of course, the current battle is in the early stages of collision after all. Most of the combat power of the three major bases have not been able to get here. As the vanguard guards, they are somewhat sparse. It will not take much for Wang Ling to stop them. Big deal. During the resistance, under Wang Ling's firepower, two wild orcs suddenly broke through the death barrier and rushed toward Wang Ling with such a momentum that they wanted to tear Wang Ling alive. With Wang Ling's shooting ability, it would only take the blink of an eye to kill these two wild orcs, but Wang Ling did not do this. He simply let them in deliberately and wanted to test them. The orc man let go of his speed and ran wildly. It was still very fast. After charging, he rushed to Wang Ling in a short time. He raised his fists at Wang Ling from left to right. Snort. Boom. And Wang Ling would not sit still and wait for death. He temporarily put away his rifle, raised his fists, and collided head-on with the two wild orcs. Oh! When switching to the intermediate level of enhancement, if Wang Ling had a head-on collision with a wild orc, he would be directly knocked away. But now, when he collides with two wild orcs at the same time, in the end, the two wild orcs will suffer pain and fall backwards. And let out a scream. Of course, a collision of this magnitude could not damage the fundamentals of the wild orc. After the two stabilized, they immediately stepped forward again and started punching each other. They seemed very unconvinced and were suppressed by Wang Ling with brute force. Try the power of the Wild Beast King. However, in the collision just now, Wang Ling did not display his true combat effectiveness in close combat. During the second collision, Wang Ling's limbs suddenly expanded in a circle and turned into the limbs of the Blue-Black Beast King. Although they were not as big as it's like a wild orc, but the power contained in it is far beyond what ordinary wild orcs can match. Boom. As a result, after another collision, the two wild orcs were dumbfounded. They were blown away more than 10 meters by Wang Ling's punch. Tisk. Now in the Ruishan branch, the troops from the three major bases are encircling and suppressing them with all their strength. Wang Ling does not have much time to test. With this result, Wang Ling can judge his own strength without reading it, so into the crazy orc had just landed on the ground and was unable to scream, when two electromagnetic electric knives suddenly shot out from the ground and pierced his chest. Although it is a long story, this test actually did not take too long. But even so, taking advantage of this short testing time, the besieged group of Yuri guards were already approaching. Snort. Swish. Oh ho. Boom. However, Wang Ling was not nervous at all. With a cold snort, he released a powerful shockwave again, blasting hundreds of approaching infantry in an instant. More than a dozen tanks even suffered varying degrees of damage. With Wang Ling as the center and the shockwave range as the diameter, a clean area suddenly appeared in this large area. There were no infantry figures, only a dozen tanks and vehicles with different health levels. For these tanks, Wang Ling did not need to use his gun anymore. Instead, he transformed his whole body into the form of a wild beast king, resisting the firepower, and crouched close. He came to a violent wind tank, clenched his fists, and smashed it hard. With a boom explosion, the violent wind tank exploded. A wild beastman can use the power of his physical fists to blast a tank with several consecutive punches, let alone Wang Ling's current wild beast king. Moreover, the Gale tank he faced was still in full HP, and was instantly killed by Wang Ling with his physical strength. There was no suspense at all. Roar. Boom. 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 With this punch to the head, Wang Ling seemed to be high. He let out a long roar, held onto the firepower of resistance, jumped one after another, jumped next to the getter tank with remaining health, and blew it up with a random punch, and then continued jumping next to another tornado tank. It exploded with a heavy punch, followed by other tanks. At this time, Wang Ling is not so much the king of wild beasts as he is a smaller version of Titan. He is more like an unbeatable little strongman. Although the remaining tanks are also desperately resisting, Wang Ling in this form was too resistant to being beaten, and it couldn't be killed no matter how hard it was beaten. Instead, it made him jump and explode one after another. In the end, only one mind-controlled vehicle was left. Jumping again and arriving in front of the mind control car, Wang Ling punched him hard 5 times in a row, causing the mind control car to explode. When ordinary orcs punch with their fists, the speed is very slow, but every punch is a super punch. But Wang Ling was different. He controlled his power very accurately. He didn't use all his strength in these 5 punches, but he used his speed advantage. He landed 5 punches in a row. The mind control car didn't even react, and was killed just like that. He is a monster. Chief, what kind of monster have you created? You shot yourself in the foot, and he actually used this power to fight back against us. Don't be stunned, hurry up, speed up the offensive, be sure to hold him back for me. The commanders of the 3 major bases saw Wang Ling blowing up all the tanks with his physical fists, and their already timid mood suddenly became heavier. As for the other infantrymen, they were all panicked now. They had not been able to understand Wang Ling before, but they did not expect that this guy who they did not take seriously would turn out to be so perverted after being unchained. One person's combat power could threaten him. The entire Russian branch. Kill. Kill. Of course, they were afraid. Under the urging of the commander, all the guards were still charging with all their might. Moreover, due to time constraints, the large guard force was getting closer and closer to Wang Ling's battle circle. Da-da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da-da. When Wang Ling saw this, he didn't even have time to release the form of the wild beast king. He directly picked up his rifle and started shooting rapidly. Fortunately, his form of the wild beast king allows him to freely control the size of his body. Otherwise, the form of the wild beast king would not be able to be used in conjunction with other arms. Under his bombardment, the momentum of the large troops guarded by Yuri was immediately greatly slowed down. Every second that passed, a large number of soldiers and tanks were killed. Every time they moved forward, a large number of soldiers and tanks were killed. Bodies were exchanged. However, although Wang Ling's combat power is powerful, there are too many enemy troops after all, and it is difficult for 2 fists to defeat 4 hands. Under his strafing, the large troops guarded by Yuri are gathering more and more, carrying huge losses, and gradually then he approached Wang Ling.